Hello, and thank you for accessing this recording. Today we're going to explore the Education and Early Years core exams. We'll be providing some general information about the exams, sharing some tips and activities to help students prepare, and examining the most recent Chief Examiner's report. A quick introduction first. My name is Gemma McGregor and I'm part of the Provider Development Team at NCFE. And our purpose is to support the teaching and learning of the technical qualification. My role is to work with education and early years T-level providers and support them during their T-level journey. My own background is in initial teacher education, and I've taught across both compulsory and post-compulsory settings. The purpose of this recording is to provide information and guidance to help you best prepare your students for the summative assessment activities. The first thing I'll do is share the outcomes of the session. You'll see these on screen now. I'll include an overview of the exam structure, share some strategies that could be used to prepare your students for the exams, and also summarise the Chief Examiner's report from the 23 summer series. In true teaching fashion, I'd like you to pause here and consider what you already know about the exams. Okay, thanks for pausing. To summarise the structure, there are two core assessments, Part A and Part B. You can see on the screen now which elements are assessed in which exam. The questions come in three different types, and students can be supported to approach each of them appropriately, something we'll explore in more detail later in the session. Looking at the structure of the exam papers, we can see that it's split into four sections, A, B, C and D. There are 96 marks for each, plus 6 for quality, which is where the students can include their English skills. As already mentioned, there's a mixture of question types, using the three assessment outcomes as the basis. The final three bullets here remind us that the different types of questions will be asking the students to do different things. I've highlighted the differences for you. To show the action verbs our students should develop their awareness of, the best chances of success. Okay, now for some more detail about the structure of the exams, with some detail about the weightings and marks. We'll start with the elements assessed in each paper. This information can support the student's revision for each exam. Secondly, the assessment objectives and weightings. And it's useful to note here that the higher weighting applied to the application of knowledge, which is AO2. Using the findings of the Chief Examiner's report, when the students met AO3, they were able to increase the marks awarded for the overall exam, and I'll come back to this later. And finally, we have a breakdown of the total marks awarded. Please pause the recording here if you'd like to make any notes. Now, let's move on to looking at the different question types and explore some strategies teachers could use to support their students in preparing to answer them. We'll start with multiple choice questions. For multiple choice, there are a number of approaches teachers and students could use, starting with reading the multiple choice question in its entirety before looking at the answer options. There's a generic example on the screen now. Answer it in your mind first. What do you think the answer might be? What choices do you think might be coming? Does it make you think any differently if the answer choices aren't there yet? Think of the benefits of using this approach. When it's for retrieval of knowledge, might saying the choices too soon influence students thinking about the answer? If they were to cover the answers up and try to answer the question with a clear mind, might this help them? The incorrect options could confuse them or doubt their knowledge of the subject, so this approach might be beneficial. Multiple choice questions are more about eliminating the wrong answers. Read every answer option in the example here and use your existing knowledge to discount at least one of the other possible answers. It then becomes a process of elimination. What strategies could be used to discount some of the other answers? What can the student remember about the other theorists in order to discount them? The answer here is, of course, B. Were you expecting to see Maslow as one of the possible answers? Exploring these first two strategies with students could help them to approach multiple choice questions differently in their exam. Multiple choice questions are designed to include what are known as plausible distractors, but using our own deductive reasoning can help us pick out those that we immediately recognise as incorrect. Teachers could use a range of sample questions to explore this process and increase students' confidence in choosing the correct answer from their own knowledge base. Some centres are asking students to write their own multiple choice questions. This allows them to explore their existing knowledge when providing answer choices which may or may not be correct, those plausible distractors, to get them thinking more deeply about topics. This strategy allows teachers to assess the depth and breadth of their students' understanding without spending time writing answers themselves, and can really empower the students and build their confidence in their subject knowledge. If an element of competition motivates your students, teachers could also use this to provide motivation and differentiated activities. Other more general advice for multiple choice questions could be to answer the questions they know first, and if they're not sure, they could select the best answer from the options provided and build their confidence for them to make an educated guess. Moving on to the next question type, short answers. These questions make up the majority of the core exams. Students should remember that short answer questions require just that, a short answer. The examiner is looking for very specific points in the answer, and it would be a huge waste of students' time to add extra information that wasn't asked for. So students should keep their answers concise and to the point. They should focus on hitting all of the points they need to and give examples if and where appropriate. I'll come back to explore how long the answer should be later. Reinforce what they should be showing in their answer, and in short answer questions, they're probably being asked to demonstrate and apply their knowledge and understanding of specific areas of the core qualification content. Remind them in their revision and preparatory activities to remember which elements of the spec the exams include. Remember that's elements 1 to 6 for paper A and 7 to 12 for paper B. Taking note of keywords and phrases in the question is also really important. Then they could rephrase the question's keywords in their answer. This should help to ensure they stay on topic and include the relevant points. The final point is also useful to keep in mind, not to ramble. And making reference back to the first bullet point, use the marks available for each question to inform how much they write. The number of marks allocated to a question usually equates to the number of points the examiner will be looking for. Encourage students to apply this when they're answering this type of question. Next, we move on to the extended writing questions. These are probably the most daunting type of question for students and the ones that present the biggest of challenges. It's useful to consider what the students are being asked to do when answering these questions, and it's here they'll be most likely to include AO3 level skills such as analysis, evaluation, and making judgments. These are skills which will probably need to be supported and developed in a constructive and structured way. Students practicing is always a good idea, no matter what the task, but do support them to carry out self and peer reviews of their work. Encourage them to consider why they apply theory to practice the way that they do, promote the analysis of how the core theory relates to their industry practice, and inspire them to evaluate their work. Students often need support to practice these higher order thinking skills. Similarly to short answer questions, if they don't know where to start, develop their ability to use the question to form their answer. This is something they could practice to develop their skills and confidence. Finally, ask yourself this question: how confidently do your students write in an analytical or evaluative way? How much support might they need to do this? Reviewing and revisiting answers they've already produced is a really good way to get started. It can also be a great motivator as the students can see the distance they've already travelled. Some detailed input on this type of higher level writing might be needed, so please do have this in mind when planning teaching and learning activities. Providing sample answers for students to critique can also really help them develop these skills and competencies that they need to be successful in their extended writing responses. And lastly, we'd also remind you that for written papers, there are marks for the quality of the written work, so please encourage careful proofreading and checking for clarity and mistakes. The content of a Chief Examiner's report for any assessment can be a fantastic teaching and learning tool for teachers, though often overlooked for this purpose. It allows us to use their observations and judgments to inform and support our delivery. We can identify themes, take away key messages, and reduce gaps in knowledge by unpicking and summarising their findings. We're going to be looking at the report from the summer series from June 23. These reports are published after each series and are available on the Education and Early Years page of the NCFE website. Firstly, we'll start with a summary of the standard of student work. Most students were able to demonstrate their knowledge and understanding using mainly appropriate technical language. So continue to encourage your students to use technical language correctly in their written responses. And there was acknowledgement that written answers were generally well structured and clearly written. Some scripts, however, contained handwriting which was difficult to read. Students should therefore practice writing and ensure that their answers can be easily read and understood. In this instance, it might be useful to complete the online exam if students struggle with the legibility of their handwriting, though these skills can always be practiced in class. Higher marks were achieved when the students focused on all aspects of the question and in their answer were able to demonstrate a good breadth and depth of understanding. The level of evaluation contributed to the marks awarded. When the students' answers applied evaluation and analysis in more detail related to the concepts, contexts, theories and principles in the industry, they were able to gain AO3 marks. I know a strategy that students can use is to use the wording of the question to help them write their answer. However, the report found that this distracted some students from focusing on the question. Encourage students to frame their answer using the question, but to ensure they don't spend too much time rewriting the question and not fully answering it. Remind students that the 0 to 19 age range should be taken into consideration and that their answer should include age-appropriate responses. And of course, the command verbs are really important when writing answers, and they should ensure that their responses meet the question expectations and requirements. The need to attempt all questions should be kept in mind, and also be aware of the marks for each question to inform what to include in terms of detail and key points. It was also evident that there were some gaps in knowledge. It might be useful to consider this. Are there any themes you can immediately identify in your classroom? There was also the acknowledgement of applying maths skills correctly, so please do remind the students that there is the expectation for them to use and demonstrate their maths competencies in the exams too. Okay, let's look at what the report highlighted in actual exams. What happens here is that the Chief Examiner summarises how the students responded to the actual questions. As future exams won't have the same questions, we've made this section rather generic. So starting with section A, on the wider context and supporting education, positive comments were made about the students drawing from their own experiences. But there were incorrect definitions of some key terms for some students. There were also inaccuracies when responding to the questions about learning theories. And although students were able to demonstrate understanding of a range of strategies working with different age groups, sometimes this focused on younger children rather than secondary school age, and some examples were not appropriate for older children. The final point relates to applying theory to practice. Generally, students were able to relate their answers to theory and gained higher marks when the theory was applied to and developed into application, whilst also demonstrating the ability to make reasoned judgments. Moving on to section B, safeguarding health and safety and well-being. And most students were able to apply their knowledge and understanding appropriately to the various questions and scenarios. However, the associated statutory guidance proved problematic for some students. In response to safeguarding questions, a common mistake related to focusing on indicators of abuse and ignoring the other factors. So do encourage students to be objective when analysing the full range of factors which could contribute to their answer. And finally, encouraging students to fully develop their explanations and answers to ensure clarity and a full demonstration of their knowledge and understanding of the relevant theories. Section C relates to behaviour, and the Chief Examiner acknowledged a sound understanding of behaviour and how it impacted on others. The main challenge here was that many students focused on negative reinforcement strategies, so please encourage students to also consider which positive strategies would be appropriate too. And also what type of strategy would be appropriate for use at different ages, and how effective modelling positive behaviour can be. And not only rewarding positive behaviour, how can they promote positive behaviour in a range of ways? And moving on to section D, parents, families and carers and working with others. The first point made here relates to how well the students understood the importance of partnership working. However, students tended to lose marks by not applying the command verb when responding and/or a general lack of development in relation to the question. And in terms of the support available, they tended to focus on children and missed out the support for families. There was some evidence of the misunderstanding of key terms, and in this case, it was for an open door policy. There were some good points made in relation to the impact of sharing images on social media, and most students were able to demonstrate their experience and knowledge of this topic. They were also able to show a good understanding of partnership working and how it relates to transition, but again, they didn't always fully develop their responses, so were unable to access full marks. Moving on to paper B. So again, we'll start with section A. Many students found the questions relating to language acquisition devices and Robert Selman's framework challenging. Most students were unable to name one level of friendship, and very few knew all of the friendship levels within the framework. Generally, students did respond well, but marks were lost where students didn't stay focused on language development. Overall, this section was responded to well, but marks were missed when students didn't show an understanding of expected milestones in language development. Strategies may have been given, but higher marks would have been awarded if students had developed their strategies and offered reasoned adjustments. Moving on to section B, reflective practice. Most students performed well in this section, especially when they developed their answers in the extended response question, linking their own experiences to the reasons for national assessments. However, most students gave general responses relating to the impact of government reviews and didn't consider the wider world impact. Many students understood the purpose of national assessments and clearly used their own experiences in their response. Most students demonstrated a sensitive understanding of depression and how mentors are able to positively support students. There were, however, some responses which were very repetitive and didn't fully explain or give reasons why certain strategies may have supported George. This resulted in students being unable to access further marks. Section C relates to equality and diversity, and the Chief Examiner acknowledged that overall most students understood and evidenced the importance of the sensitive application of inclusion. Students often gave thoughtful responses and demonstrated knowledge and understanding of the issues some individuals with difficulties may face. Many students focused on the impact of a robust behaviour policy and showed a clear understanding of the importance of consistently challenging any discriminatory language. There were some very pertinent and sensitive responses to the positive impact that culturally diverse materials may have in addressing negative stereotyping and discriminatory language. Lastly, moving on to section D, special educational needs and disability and English as an additional language. The Chief Examiner felt that students generally demonstrated sensitivity in this section and had an awareness of differing needs and the importance of ensuring that suitable resources and strategies are put in place for all those with additional needs or an additional language. Additionally, many students demonstrated an understanding of accessibility and knew how this could be implemented within their setting. It was also noted that there were some insightful responses to the way that a communication partner can support a pupil in school, demonstrating not only an awareness of the importance of this role, but an appreciation of how valuable this support can be. Very few students were able to name any type of eye tracking device for this question, and many students did not pay attention to the wording of the question and gave examples of resources rather than strategies. We've now come to the end of this session, so many thanks for listening. We hope you found this commentary around the core exams and exploring the Chief Examiner's finding useful, and that you make links to your own classroom to support your own students in delivery. You can see our contact email address on the screen now and the website page where you'll find our additional CPD and support activities. Please do scan our QR code to access the evaluation for this session. We always appreciate your feedback, and we do hope to see you for future CPD sessions throughout the remainder of the academic year.